everyone, and welcome to TLDR Psychology. What I'd like to talk with you about today is a concept that comes up a lot in anxiety treatment, a lot in trauma therapy, and in some other places as well. But it has to do with the concept of confusing what's possible, something that's possible, with something that is likely. Now, what I mean by this is that a lot of times anxiety comes from the fact that you're worried about something happening, maybe something also that you're catastrophizing about. So you're thinking that not only is it going to happen, you're worried about it happening in the future, but also that it's going to be really, really bad. But the thing that you're worried about is actually probably a rare occurrence. Now, sometimes these rare occurrences have even happened to people, and that will make it even more likely that people will think that it could happen to them again. But the fact of the matter is actually that the chances of these things happening are very rare. These are things like, for example, being in a mass shooting, or being mugged in an area that otherwise has very low crime, or anything of that sort, where it's unlikely to happen. Being in a plane accident, being in an elevator that plummets many stories and takes you down with it. All of these fears that generally speaking might not be entirely rational. Could they happen? Yes. Are they likely to happen? No. And sometimes you can even juxtapose those things with far riskier behaviors that folks undertake on a regular basis that they're not that worried about. Things like, for example, driving a car. Driving a car is far more risky than flying in an airplane, for example, but a lot more people are afraid of planes than they are of driving. Now, part of how I highlight this and help people see it is I use an example that I call for short falling beef. Now, what I mean by falling beef is back in the 1970s, there was an incident where someone was driving along on a road, and from their perspective, about 50 frozen cow carcasses fell out of the sky and crushed them in their car, killing them, which is actually, technically this is a tragedy, but of ways to die, it's also a little bit bizarre, right? You're killed by falling frozen cows. Now, what actually happened was that a truck had overturned and dropped these frozen cows on top of this person, killing them. But the reason why I like to bring this up is that this is an example of something that has happened. Being killed by frozen cows falling out of the sky in your car. That is a thing that has happened. And despite that, I am not worried about that when I drive. And most other people, after hearing about this incident, also are not afraid of falling beef. And so when we talk about in therapy, is this a falling beef sort of thing? That's what when I speak about that, that's what I'm referring to. When you're worried about something that technically maybe has happened or something that could happen, but when you really look at the probability of it is really very low. And sometimes using that phrase falling beef, adding maybe just a little bit of humor into it, helps people reframe how they're looking at their own fears, and might even allow them to look at them the fears themselves as not quite as serious, particularly if they're equally as irrational. So thank you all for tuning in to TLDR Psychology again. I'll look forward to talking to you again soon.